I'm broke, but I'm making a lot of money. So I kind of need your help with that. And I don't know if you understand what I'm saying by I'm broke and I'm making a lot of money.
Oh, I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah, it's been hard. I came from nothing. So like I came from nothing. I had my parents didn't have a lot of money. It wasn't really family. I mean, in Egypt, my parents had a lot of money in Egypt. But when we came to the US, we had nothing. We started over. I mean, my dad used to own a company down in Egypt. He came here, he started working at a gas station. So it was a complete, restart for everything.
Were you born here?
No, I was born in Egypt.
Born in Egypt. How old were you when you came here?
12 years old.
All right, so you went through exactly the transition.
Yeah.
I have seen that before, that there's a bad transition that takes place when you grew up well off, not necessarily wealthy, but well off, and all of a sudden had taken away from you. And in the cases that I'm thinking of, it's also moving to the United States from somewhere.
And to give you an idea, like the reason why my English is good and things like that is like when I was in Egypt, I went to a private American school. That school is $100,000 a year for each person.
Wow.
And it was me and my sister. Well, 100,000 Egyptian pounds. So my dad was, paying 200,000 Egyptian pounds a year just for me and my sister to get an education. So we were fairly well off in Egypt. And he came here. I mean, he sold everything. We probably had we came here with like $60,000, which is a lot when you convert the currencies. And we had to start completely over. And, me being 12, my mom's working I remember she was working at Arby's when we first came, and my dad was working at a gas station. When we were in Egypt, we had someone to come clean our house every single day. My mom didn't work. My dad provided, and he was always traveling. We were always traveling. We were always going on vacation. I had like a private, one of the highest rated clubs there, like for fitness and stuff, and just I was able to do like swimming. I was able to do all these things, and I was able to experience all these things. And to have that all taken away from me and come to the U.S. and have nothing and kind of like scraping by and taking the bus, it was hard as a kid.
Yes, of course it was.
Yeah.
Of course it was. And it probably contributes to, let me be honest, you're being a bit of a spendthrift now.
Oh yeah.
because not to put on my psychologist hat, but what happened was you had wealth, effectively wealth. You were used to things being available to you easily. And being a kid, you saw only the symbols of wealth, not the things behind it, not what it took to get it and to hold it. So you have the symbols of wealth, and it's taken away from you.
Yeah.
And now you're having to claw yourself for the essentials, claw your way up for the essentials of life. Well, of course, you start focusing on the markers, the things that showed that you were wealthy and you want to get there. Well, of course, that means spending money. A person who has plenty of money coming in and more money going out can easily be making a wonderful income and be broke because they're spending at least as much money as they're taking in. That's foolishness.
Yeah.
It is psychologically understandable, but it remains foolish.
Yeah. And to give you an idea, we'll just kind of talk about my entrepreneurship growing up and kind of where I came from is for those 3 years, 2 years coming from Egypt to here, I kind of fell into a depression. I was getting bullied in school. I was always made fun of because of, I wasn't wearing the nicest clothes, or I wasn't able to get things that my friends were getting, and I was also weird, according to people. I was different. And that's when I got really fat. I was just eating. I would go home and eat. I would be at school and eat, and I would just, I ate.
You're comforting yourself with food.
Yeah. I was eating like a pack of Oreos a day, and it wasn't healthy food. It was like, we didn't have a lot of money, so it was like Oreos and, the big gallon milk and the cheap vanilla ice cream, the tub that's that big, and, just that's what I was eating. And my mom was working, my dad was working, no one was there to take care of me except for my sister. And I got really fat. And when it came to middle school, 8th grade, that's when, things kind of started leveling out. I started maturing, end of 8th grade, and I was like, what am I doing? Why am I fat? And honestly, like, I looked at myself in the mirror, I was like, why am I fat? I was having a lot of health problems. I was,
Sure.
you know, and that's when I chose fitness. And that's when I started being an entrepreneur. At 14, actually started mowing people's lawns in my neighborhood. And I was making like $300 a week at 14, which is a lot of money for me. Like,
Sure, of course, that's a lot of money for a 14-year-old.
I was mowing each person's lawn for like $40. I wasn't even using my own lawnmower because we didn't have one. There was this one lady, I remember her very well. She was really nice. She had a dog. She would pay me $100 a month to like watch her dog or take her dog out on a walk. And she said I can use her lawnmower to mow other people's lawns.
That's very nice of her.
So I was doing that. I had lemonade stands at 14, and that's, you know, I'd also ding dong dish people, which was not the smartest thing to do. But yeah, that's kind of where my whole entrepreneurship started.
What did you do with the money?
I got everything I wanted, because to give you an idea, when for Christmas, I got nothing. Like, my family had nothing. Like, for Christmas, like, I remember I really, really wanted an Xbox. Couldn't get it. You know, my parents didn't have enough money for me to even get an Xbox. Just, you know, I wasn't able to get what I wanted. So that's what I did. I bought my first skateboard. Like, I really wanted a skateboard. Couldn't get a skateboard, so I was able to go out and buy a skateboard. I remember that was the first thing I did with the money. I got a gym membership. That's the second thing I did with the money. And then kind of going over the years, it somehow, like, it fades between 14 and 16. They kind of blend together. I started drop shipping.
Okay.
And that's what I started doing with the money. And that's when I got my first job, and I was a lifeguard. So it was a mix between the money I started making as a lifeguard. That's when I started reinvesting it back into my drop shipping stores. And to tell you the least, they were not pretty. They were horrible. I threw away the money. Like, I would make, I remember, like, I would work 10, 20 hours a week, and money would come in. I would put half of it in drop shipping, and I would not go anywhere. And looking back at it, I mean, the stores I made, everything I made was horrible. I mean, I wouldn't buy from it. It wouldn't sell.
There's some surprising parallels to our story. The difference is you grew up speaking English. I grew up speaking Southern. And so when I moved to New York when I was 7, I got ridiculed because I was a Southerner, because I had a strong Southern accent. I lost that real quick. I also was an entrepreneur. I would collect Coke bottles, which in those days brought you 2 cents a bottle, and people would store them in their garage and then give them to me, which was great. So I made a reasonable amount of money on that, and I would cut lawns and shovel snow because we were in New York. So I would do all of those things. But what happened next was different, because I did not go towards entrepreneurship. I went towards investing. And so I took the money that I earned with that, and then once I was 15, I was a messenger boy in New York City, and the money that I earned in that, and I invested it. I invested in the stock market. And it was the middle 60s. It was a great time to invest in the stock market. And so I did that. My father was on Wall Street. That's how I learned how to do that. But the result was something interesting happened. That money was now unreachable to me.
Yes.
Because I'd have to go through the hassle of selling the stock and explaining to my parents why I was selling the stock and all of those things. I didn't have ready cash to spend, so I didn't spend it.
Yeah.
So I got in the habit of, whenever I had extra money, putting it away as investment.
Yeah.
And I have followed that all my life. And as a result, after a while, you wind up with a fair amount of money in savings, regardless of how you get money from selling companies.
Yeah.
Just from the pure investment. My father never sold a company.
Yeah. And see, and I did that to a certain extent. So, for example, when I was 16, I did 3 big accomplishments that year that were big to me. I got my first phone, like real phone. I always paid for my things, but I would get like a $50 Android or a $100 Android or things like that. I got an iPhone XR, which to me at the time was like a $600 phone. It was a big deal to me. And I also paid for my own driving school. And then about 8 months later, I bought my first car, and it was a BMW. It was a nice BMW. It was my first car, and I bought it cash. For 16, to me, that was a big deal.
Yeah, it was.
Being able to do that. I crashed the car 2 weeks later.
Of course.
But it wasn't my fault, and it was actually someone T-boned, or I T-boned someone who was getting out of like a U-Haul store, and they were not looking. It was actually a pretty bad car accident. So was able to do that. I got the money for the car, and then I went and bought another BMW. So that was kind of that. And then COVID came around, and COVID is what changed my life.
Okay.
So I was still working as a lifeguard this whole time. I was doing my side hustles. And when COVID came around, unemployment came.
Yeah.
And I liked unemployment, I'll tell you that.
Well, yeah.
So when unemployment came, I was, I wasn't working the lifeguarding job, so I was getting unemployment. And when that money came in, I would save it, I would invest it, and I started trading stocks. I lost all the money trading stocks. I was not good at it,
Yes.
but I was trying. And then I also started reselling things. So I would get like PlayStations and resell them, or I would get Xboxes and resell them, and that's when they were needed at the time. So basically the money I would make from reselling, I would put in stocks and lose it. But I was learning. I was being productive, I was proactive about it, and I was trying. And that's kind of the whole thing about my stories. I'm like, I was never really successful. I was never successful in one thing, but I was always trying.
And I think that's a good training, but why are you broke?
Because I never was successful in that time. Like, just at that time, I was never successful. And to me, being like, it was always like, you'd make $1,000, 500 would go towards, my food, my groceries for the week, X, Y, Z. And then the other 500 would go towards me trying to make money with the stock market. And I would lose it because I didn't know how to trade. And looking back at it is I could have paper traded. I could have learned trades. I could have been successful first. I could have mastered it first before just throwing money at it.
Well, I would say, and I'd say this, of course, based on my own success at it, with my investment, I always looked for longer term investment. I have always had a longer term look. And that is, I think, developing the idea that you're going to become wealthy slowly is, for the vast majority of people, certainly was for me, by far the more practical than looking for a get-rich-quick scheme, even a smart one.
Yeah.
And so I would invest in those days, IBM stock and airlines and things like that, which were the ones that were growing in the 60s. And that would be my way of socking the money away.
Yeah.
When I was in graduate school, I remember my friends joking about the black hole of my investments. The money went in and never came out. Well, it didn't. It stayed in there and stayed in there for investment. Once IRAs and 401ks and those sorts of things came in, I put every single penny that was required to fill them up every year. When you do that for 40 years, there starts to be a fair amount of money in there, especially if you've invested it wisely once it's in there.
Yeah. And I think that was a big thing for me, is going from a, get rich quick. Like, that's what I wanted. I was like, okay, if I put $500 in this stock and I do an option trade, it's going to go up and I'm going to make like $10,000 and I'll be able to do this and do that and it will set me free. And like, keep in mind, like, I was still in high school. Like, I was in high school making $5,000 a month and doing option trading on the side, probably wasting $2,000 a month on option trading. Crypto too, so I was doing crypto and options, and I was doing like NFTs. I was doing all the fun stuff that if I did it right, keep in mind, if I did it right at that time, I would have been very well off.
Sure, but
I didn't. And then moving on to after that, that's kind of when looking back at it, the change I would have made from the knowledge I have now and the knowledge I've acquired from you is I would have put that money aside in long-term investments like the S&P 500, Apple, Nvidia, Tesla, if it was public at the time.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, I did it with I did it with Microsoft when it went public and things like that.
Because if I did that $20,000 that I was putting aside at the time every year would have probably been like 140 now.
And you're talking about doing options trading.
Yeah.
I have millions of dollars in investments. I almost never do options trading. I very rarely will do an options trade in that I'll sell a call on a stock I want to hold, but want to take a little bit of profit right now. But I don't want to sell the stock. And I'll sometimes do like covered calls and things like that. They're no risk.
Yeah.
And they can bring you some money. In fact, they can bring in a reasonable amount of money. Being able to think in the longer term and not see some shiny object you want is a difference between you and me.
Yeah.
Now, I can't compare you at 16 with your phone, because when I was 16, we were just getting away from number please on the phone with an operator. So it's a little bit different world. But it was exceedingly unusual for someone my age to be investing in the stock market at that point.
Yes.
And the only reason I was because my father was on Wall Street and I knew from him how to do it.
And that's another part too, is like, I didn't have mentor, I didn't have anything. I had YouTube, and I remember watching like I would just watch educational videos, and a big part of it was my fitness. Like when I first started fitness, I don't know if people know Jeff Nippard, like he's all I would watch, because I was like, I want to educate myself on this. And by the way, I was not a good student. I was like not doing good in my classes up until freshman year, and that's when I had like a 3.5 GPA, and sophomore year I had a 3.9, and then I did Running Start, which means I went to college, and that's when, like, that was a good year for me, because I went to college, I was able to make my own time, and at the same time I was really focusing on the businesses. And I never really worked a real job. I did like 10 hours every week at like this. I never really worked a full-time job, but I was always making full-time income somehow, some way, with the side hustles I had going on.
Yeah, I never worked during school, but I always, starting from the time I was 15, I worked worked all summer. Yeah. And that proved to be very useful and very valuable to me. For me, it was I worked in New York City as a messenger, because I grew up in New York, as a messenger boy, and that made some money from me and taught me New York. I mean, I knew New York back like the back of my hand. But then I went to Arizona and was working in the copper mine. I had to learn how to get a place for me to stay for myself. I had to arrange carpools for myself at 16. Yeah. I had to do all of those things, and that served me really well. Yeah. But let me ask you a different question. What are you doing now to stop being broke?
That is going to be a great question for the next video, because this video is mainly about my history, why I am where I am today, and kind of my struggle over the last 10 years. A lot of people think I came from something when I really didn't. I mean, went here, and then had to build it up myself. So what am I doing now? That's a question for the next video, and we're gonna go over that in detail. So make sure you subscribe, make sure you turn on the post notification. Don't want you guys to miss out on that one. Dave is gonna give me some amazing input on how I can...
Meaning I'm gonna nag him.
Yeah, about how I can stop making stupid decisions, like buying my Porsche or buying a Rolex, or spending money on things that I shouldn't really spend money on right now. So we'll see you guys in the next video.